Tyranny requires division so that it can claim the authority to govern over the division it has created, and that is exactly what is going on right now in Quebec and Canada. David Freiheit, Viva PPC, Episode 8, entitled Social Division. For those of you who may not have heard, the Premier of Quebec, François Legault, has unveiled his plan to implement a vaccine passport. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is a passport system that would allow or deny access to non-essential services to those who are or who are not fully vaccinated. It's going to be implemented apparently with an app on a phone and a QR code, which will confirm the vaccination status of an individual. And if an individual is not fully vaccinated, whatever that means, because at this point in time it means 2 vaccines, but some people are saying that it might require boosters, and so full vaccination is itself a term that's going to evolve over time. Setting that aside, entry into non-essential businesses will be allowed or denied on the basis of full vaccination. Now, one parenthesis here. For the time being, the government is reassuring us that, don't worry, this is only going to apply to non-essential businesses, as though that's any assurance whatsoever. But I'm telling you now, and I'm predicting it because it's only logical, if the rationale is that the unvaccinated or the not fully vaccinated are such a public menace and such a risk that they should be denied entry into cafes, gyms, restaurants, then it would be all the more true that they should be denied entry into essential services like hospitals, clinics, and so on. And so it is only a matter of time before this vaccine passport applies to essential services as well, where we're going to be living in a full 2-tiered Orwellian system of second-class citizens who are going to be denied entry into everything, and we're going to have separate facilities created for the unvaccinated. That is the world that our governments are creating right now. But bring this back to the plan as described in this most recent press conference. As of September 1st, there's going to be apparently an app on a phone. It's going to be test run in certain restaurants, gyms, and cafes, where the employees, I presume, of the restaurants are going to scan citizens coming in to ensure that they are double vaccinated, and the confirmation is going to come by way of QR code. We are literally, as citizens in Canada, going to have our mobility rights, our right to live in a free and democratic society, determined by a QR code that identifies us as fully vaccinated or not. Now, when I say that this is going to cause public strife, what does one think is going to be the reaction among citizens when you have citizens scanning fellow citizens to determine whether or not they can enter a place of business? It is going to cause strife. It is going to cause conflict, and not in the David Mamet way of every fear hides a wish. I don't wish this, I fear it, but it is inevitable. When you have citizens governing other citizens, restricting other citizens' rights to enter businesses, it's going to create strife. And the government imposing this burden on other citizens, knowing full well what's going to happen, is irresponsible, reckless, negligent, all the more so since there hasn't been any concrete evidence provided as to why this is necessary under the circumstances, and whether or not it's even going to be effective to achieve whatever goal the government thinks this is going to achieve. Which brings us to another point, which is not irrelevant. Why has this not passed through the standard legislative process? Why has there not been a public debate on this so these citizens can weigh in, can hear the arguments for and against, can see the evidence to support such a draconian measure of a vaccine passport? Why has our government gotten used to governing like a tyrannical dictator? Well, I guess 2 years of conditioning has been sort of a bad start, where once you get away with imposing one health order, one measure after another, in the absence of any democratic debate, legislative process, you get into the habit of doing it to the point where François Legault at a press conference yesterday said, we should probably stifle other people's abilities to use platforms to influence the public. You wouldn't want to have a debate to test the legitimacy and the science behind the measures the government is implementing. Closing that parenthesis, this policy is going to literally tear the fabric of a democratic and free society. And not just among citizens in businesses and, citizens on the street, among families. Because François Legault himself has now said they're going to grant privileges to citizens who have made the effort to get double vaccinated. grant privileges. In my mind, these are not privileges that the government is talking about. These are fundamental rights that are guaranteed by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that the government has usurped, the government has taken from us, and now has the audacity to refer to them as privileges that the government can decide to give back to us or not give back to us based on our compliance with medical intervention that the government is imposing on us. But setting that aside, this is going to create division among families because these vaccine passports, these privileges that are going to be granted or not to citizens are going to apply to children as young as 12 years old because they are also governed by these requirements. And so, as if adolescenthood, as if high school was not hard enough, now you're going to be putting children in a position where if they do not submit to what the National Institute of Health refers to as an experimental vaccine, it is non-FDA approved, emergency authorization use. If children do not submit to this, if parents do not submit their children to this, their children are going to be denied privileges. Their children are going to be ostracized in high school, treated like second-class citizens in high school. And what's going to happen there? You're going to have kids who are going to be written off as anti-vaxxers, even if both of their parents are fully vaccinated, but do not necessarily see the usefulness of vaccinating their children under these circumstances. The children are going to be written off, the children are going to be demonized, and it's going to cause strife between the children and their very parents. And inevitable, not a fear hiding a wish, it is just a fear of the inevitability that this policy is going to cause families to be torn apart, because what you're going to have, understandably so, are kids saying, "Mommy, Daddy, just let me get vaccinated so I can play with the rest of the kids, so I can get the privileges that the rest of the kids get," and they're not going to understand the dynamic. They may not understand if they have a medical condition that is such that they should not get the vaccine according to their doctors. And this is another amazing thing about all of this, the absolute invasion of privacy, that people are saying, well, if you're not vaccinated, you can't come in. There are plenty of documented medical reasons for which people cannot get vaccinated. And so what you're going to have here is either denying services based on medical conditions, or you're going to be forcing people to divulge what some might feel to be among the most private information on earth, their own medical conditions. You know, I've had shingles. I'm not shy to talk about it. And it is a known side effect, not just of the COVID vaccine, a potential risk of any vaccine, that it can trigger a relapse of shingles. That's a consideration that some people might have as a legitimate concern to not get the vaccine. And now they're either going to be denied privileges, denied services because of that, or they're going to have to divulge that information to fellow citizens, or even if the government works out a way for this to be done confidentially, they're going to have to divulge that information to the government, as though the government has any right to know these private details of individuals. This policy, other than being arguably unscientific because it's not clear that it's even going to achieve whatever the desired objective is undemocratic. It has not gone through any standard legislative process. It has been imposed on us by a increasingly tyrannical government, notwithstanding the absolute social strife it is going to cause. And hey, at the federal level, not only is the federal government doing nothing to protect the charter rights of the citizens, they are just handing boatloads of cash to the government. Trudeau now promised no strings attached billions of dollars to the François Legault government. And all the while, the rights of the citizens are being stripped away day by day, right by right. And the Conservatives are doing nothing about it. NDP is doing nothing about it. Liberals are doing nothing about it. The Bloc is doing nothing about it. The only party that is doing anything about this is the PPC, the People's Party of Canada. And that is why I've decided that I have to fight with them to protect our rights and to keep Canada what it was, a great, free, and democratic society, and not one where our very rights as citizens are predicated on being coerced into medical intervention that is being imposed on us by a government that imposes this in the absence of any democratic process. With that said, if you want to support my campaign, the link is in the pinned comment. More important than that, just share the link, share the message, let the world know that there is a party out there fighting for the rights of Canadian citizens, and that is the People's Party of Canada. Peace.